That's recording. So, hello everybody. Welcome to another Athletics Pride Network Forum event. We're really pleased to host this one ahead of World Mental Health Day on Saturday. We've got some really good speakers coming up, and that should be excellent to hear from them. And we really encourage a lot of conversation here from everybody. So we'd like your questions coming in via either putting your hand up and speaking with them, or whether you want to put them in the chat box. I'll be kind of moderating that while Susie acts as our MC for the evening. I'm just doing the introductions here. So as I say, welcome everybody. It's nice to see a few new faces on here, a few initials, but still new people on the call. As I said, the Athletics Pride Network, for those that are new and started, set up and launched in April this year. So we're really pleased to be hosting these forum events and hopefully they've been useful so far. Any new ideas people would like to see, please do let us know. We'd really like to hear from you. Just a little bit of an update from me in terms of just to point you to our social media channels. Obviously with the Facebook group, that's there for people to start conversation and put their posts up there. We'd really encourage you to get involved there. It's been a bit of a new, we're in our infancy starting that page, so bear with us over the next few weeks, but we'd really like you to kind of continue the conversation on there. And we've also got our Twitter page, which is Athletics Pride 1, which if you're not following already, please do, and encourage other people to follow as well, because we really want to build that community. We're currently behind Pride in Water, not that it's a competition, but I'd quite like us to have a few more followers, so please do encourage people there. So in my notes it says introduce Susie, so I'm literally going to introduce Susie to introduce herself. And just one little last thing from me is that if you're not speaking in this, just put your audio on mute and go from there. Susie.
Thanks, Gareth. So hello everyone. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Susie O'Connor. We've got two fabulous guests who I'm about to introduce and quickly say a couple of words about me. I'm a club runner. I'm a member of two great running clubs, the wonderful Wimbledon Windmilers, which is my local club, and the fantastic London Frontrunners, which is London's largest LGBT running club. I think the country's largest LGBT running club. And I was really pleased to bring my grassroots running experience to the Athletics Pride Network when it was set up last year. And also able to bring my experience of participating in athletics as a trans woman. From the moment I started serious running, which was late in life, about 6 years ago, I discovered how great that was for my emotional and mental good health. And it helped to build my psychological resilience, which I needed when I transitioned as a sort of active member of my running clubs and competing in different events. And I got tremendous, really tremendous personal support from all the members of my two clubs and the wider running community. So it won't be a surprise for you to learn that I'm a massive advocate of the way that running can support good mental health. And therefore, I'm really excited about this conversation we're about to have. So we have two great panelists this evening, and let me introduce them. So we have with us Helen Jones. Helen is the CEO of the charity MindOut, which is a fabulous LGBTQ mental health service, and it's also a supporter and some partner of the Athletics Pride Network. And then we have Liz Purbrick, who's the Inclusion Manager at England Athletics, and someone who I'm very aware of because she leads on the Run and Talk program of England Athletics, for which I'm one of the mental health champions. I'm wearing my T-shirt tonight, proudly. So I think we're going to have a great conversation about mental health, LGBT people, and running and athletics. So let me just mention that what the reason we're having this discussion right now is that on Saturday, as Gareth mentioned, it's World Mental Health Day. So that's is an opportunity to celebrate, or not celebrate, to raise awareness globally about the challenges of and the need to support good mental health, and the theme this year is mental health for all, and so I hope we can do our little bit to contribute to that. So without further ado, I think we should open up the discussion, and I'd like to welcome both of our guests to the Athletics Pride Network. And could I ask you both, perhaps Helen first, to tell us a little bit about yourselves on what you do to support mental well-being through your organisation?
Yes, thank you, Susie. And first of all, thank you ever so much for inviting me tonight. It's really brilliant to be able to talk to your Pride Network. Really pleased to be here, and really pleased to be talking about World Mental Health Day. That's on Saturday the 10th. And I do think it's a really important day. As Susie said, it's a great day to get us to focus a bit on mental health, to think about mental health, and to talk about mental health. Yeah, so as Susie said, I'm the CEO of MindOut. We're an LGBTQ mental health service. We're based in Brighton, but we also operate nationally. We're fairly unique in that we're run by and for LGBTQ people who have lived experience of mental health issues. And what we do, we offer a range of services to help people improve their mental well-being. We have advocacy support for individuals who are struggling with getting access to the mental health support that they need. We have an online service. It's actually open at the moment. It's open until 7:30. It's open every day. And that's an instant chat service where anybody around the country, anybody who's got access to the internet, can get instant help and support with any mental health issue of any kind, whether you just need some information or there's something really bothering you or you're in crisis. We talk to a lot of suicidal people. But yes, that service is accessible to all LGBTQ people anywhere. We also offer low-cost, affordable counselling, peer support groups. We do a lot of peer support. I think it's really important. Lots of people want to get together in a safe space to talk to other people who have similar issues to themselves. And that's a part of our services that has grown hugely. We've been operating for 20 years, and group work has really taken off over those 20 years. We also have a befriending service, and we have a new telephone befriending service. So when the lockdown started, when the pandemic really hit, we put all of our services online, but quickly found that there were some people, some of our service users really didn't want to use online services. For some people, they can't. They may not have anywhere discreet or safe where they can use an online service regularly. And some people really didn't want to and wanted support by telephone. So we've set up a telephone befriending service over the last few months. We also do a lot of work in the suicide prevention field. Suicidal distress is much higher in LGBTQ communities compared to the rest of the population. I think it's a really important community issue. And we do lots of work around peer support for people who are suicidally distressed, as well as things like our online service, which is open to anybody who is feeling suicidal. We also do a lot of anti-stigma campaigning, and I think over the last 10 years, a lot has been done about stigma, about mental health, and you know, conversations like these, like we're having tonight, are a really important part of breaking down stigma, about making it easier to talk about mental health and helping people develop their awareness and knowledge and their confidence to talk about mental health. I think a lot of people worry about saying the wrong thing or not knowing what to say as regards mental health, or thinking that you've got to be a bit careful in case you upset people. And I think the more we talk about it, the more confident and able we become to provide support within our own networks, as well as perhaps more confident to seek support for ourselves. We also provide a lot of training for mental health service providers, both statutory services and community and voluntary sector services. I mean, a lot of LGBTQ people will put off asking for support from mainstream services because they're not sure whether they're going to be affirmative and welcoming or not. And I think that's a real problem because it delays people asking for support. People wait, they're not sure whether to go to their doctors or talk to anyone else about their issues. And the sooner you get help, the better. That really is very important. We also run workshops and courses. So we run things like mindfulness sessions, sleep matters, anything to do with mental health, really. We run courses on. We recently started some relationship skills courses because problems in relationships is one of the highest issues that people bring to us. And we also have some specific services. So we have a trans advocacy service, and we have trans and non-binary sessions on our online service. Similarly, we have services for people of colour, LGBTQ people of colour. We have some 50+ services. And also at the minute we're running a peer support group for women. And again, I think that's really important because people with intersectional identities, we know that they have higher rates of mental health issues than people who don't have intersectional identities. Anyway, that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what we do. As you can tell, we have quite a range of services, and I think that's really important because it means that we can find some support for everybody who comes to us. We don't turn people away, and I think that's really important. So maybe I'll stop there and let you hand over to Liz, and then if people have got any questions for me later, they can always ask me.
Thanks, Helen.
Okay.
Liz, do you want to?
Lovely, thanks, Helen. Hello, everyone.
What you do?
Yeah, good evening. So I'm Liz Purbrick. I'm the inclusion manager at England Athletics, and I'm guessing a number of you probably be aware of England Athletics and what we do, but just in case you don't, we are the kind of organisation that deals with grassroots development of the sport in England. So we provide support to over 1,500 clubs and other organisations, and that ranges from a number of things such as coach development, competition, resources for clubs, welfare support, volunteer training. And within that, I lead on our mental health work internally and externally. So externally, we have the #RunAndTalk programme. And I'll tell you a lot more about that later on. And then internally as well, I'm a workplace mental health champion. We're proud at England Athletics. We were the first organisation within the sports sector to join the Workplace Wellbeing Index, which is run by Mind, which really kind of checks and challenges where you are within your mental health support for you and your employees. And in the first year we were awarded a silver standard, so we're proud of that, and obviously still work to be done to support both our staff internally but our members externally. So thanks for having me this evening. Hopefully I can share some useful information on the programme, but it'll also be really good for me to connect with you as a group of people to see what more we can do within the #Run and Talk programme to support mental health of the LGBT community, but also to upskill the volunteers that work on that programme as well. So thank you, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Les. So let me move on to another question. So we're living now at the moment with in very strange times. Helen, can I ask you, have you seen an increase in the demand for your services during lockdown and the various restrictions? And we don't want you to breach any kind of client confidentiality, but if you could sort of maybe highlight any particular themes which arise, particularly kind of relevant to the situation that people are trying to cope with at the moment.
Yes, certainly. And yes, we have had a large increase in people contacting us over the whole course of the pandemic, and particularly things like our online service. I think we had over one 3-week period, we had a 47% increase in people contacting us. And likewise, our advocacy services, they've been very oversubscribed since the pandemic started. And yes, the issues that people have brought, I mean, for some people, I think there's no doubt that it really intensified what they were going through at the time. So whatever mental health issues they might have been dealing with pre-pandemic most certainly got worse. And some of the reasons for that were that initially a lot of other mental health support just shut, and quite a few people were discharged from other support services because they couldn't offer them anything online. So they were saying, oh, we can't offer you anything, we're going to discharge you. And people were cut off from the support that they had gathered around them before the pandemic started. And that made some people feel ever so anxious and quite abandoned and alone. That's got a bit better since, because I think a lot of services have worked out ways to deliver support not face-to-face, and so that's working a bit better. Other issues that come up a lot are around housing. So during the lockdown, when everybody had to stay indoors, I mean, that's fine if you're living in safe accommodation with people who you get on with, that you're out to, who are supportive of whatever's happening. That's just not the case for a lot of people. And being trapped in living situations where there were people who don't acknowledge or accept your sexual orientation or your gender identity can be really, really difficult. And we had some awful stories of people, I mean, really abusive situations, and people trapped and unable to go anywhere else. I mean, it's tragic, really. And then social isolation. I mean, isolation in the pandemic meant something a bit different, but even before the pandemic, a lot of the people we work with are socially isolated, and it's a bit ironic. You know, I live in Brighton and Hove, which is one of the biggest LGBTQ communities in Europe, and yet so many of the people we see don't feel like they really belong to that community, or feel excluded for all sorts of different reasons. And with the pandemic, I think that just made people feel worse, because suddenly they were cut off from any places where you might go, where you can mix with other LGBTQ people, or places that you're used to being able to access, either for sort of social, cultural, leisure, supportive activities. Suddenly that was all gone. So where was our community? It had sort of disappeared. And of course, there's lots of community stuff online. I mean, look at us now, here we are online. But again, as I was saying earlier, that wasn't and isn't what some people really need and want. So I think it's definitely made isolation worse. And loneliness is awful. Loneliness is so bad for our health. It's bad for our mental health. It's also bad for your physical health. And poverty in general, I think, is an issue that's come up loads since the pandemic started. I think there's a lot of hidden poverty in LGBTQ communities that we really don't know about. I mean, a couple of years ago, we started a food bank where I work, because so many people were coming to appointments who were hungry, people who hadn't eaten for days. And what I found shocking, and still do, is that quite a lot of those people were in employment, some of them in full-time employment. And because of housing costs, which in Brighton and the South East are huge, because of housing costs and utility costs, you know, people need to cover their rental, their mortgages and their utilities before anything else, and food comes third. And for some people on very low wages, on low incomes, paying very high housing costs, people just did not have enough money for food. And I think there's a lot more of that since the pandemic, the economic insecurity and people losing jobs. I think that's going to hit us harder. And of course, you know, money is not a prerequisite for good mental health, and having money doesn't necessarily give you good mental health. But if you're unable to look after your very basic needs, you don't have the money for your essential needs, then that will have an impact on your mental health. It will make you feel worse about a lot of other things. So having enough money is really important for our mental health. So yes, and we do a lot of work with people to try and help them with debt, to help them with welfare benefits, to help them try and sort out their financial situations. That's another big bit of what we do for people. So yeah, I would say those are some of the top issues that people have brought. I mean, of course, there is the other side about how creative and resourceful people have been during the pandemic to find other networks and to look after themselves and to improve their well-being and to manage their lives in the pandemic. And some of those stories are brilliant. Yeah, so it's not, I don't want to paint it all as doom and gloom, I guess. That there are both sides to that.
Fantastic. So that's obviously the real challenge is for the LGBTQ community out there during this time. Perhaps turning to something slightly more positive then, as to how we can kind of help people with mental health. Liz, would you like to tell us? I mean, I'm already very knowledgeable about Run and Talk and have been involved in that program in my club, but maybe not everyone is. So perhaps you'd like to tell us a bit about that great program that you run.
Definitely, Susie. Yeah, one of my favourite topics. So hashtag Run and Talk is a partnership between ourselves and the mental health charity Mind. So they support us, and really the main aims are about trying to get the athletics and running community talking about mental health and trying to remove some of that stigma. Then providing some support and guidance and sort of raising awareness to give people some knowledge around mental health. And then finally, to support people who are experiencing mental health problems actually to come and be physically active and to get those, the benefits that running can bring. So we work with our affiliated clubs and Run Together groups. Run Together is our recreational running programme, and we ask them to join the programme and appoint people within their groups as mental health champions. So like Susie. So we're just over 1,000 mental health champions now across 351 different clubs and groups. And really their role is just that, to champion mental health. So we've got a sort of a bit of a strapline for them around run, talk, signpost. So these people are passionate about mental health. A large majority have lived experience of mental health problems or supporting someone close to them. But they're not mental health professionals. They're not there to diagnose or provide any, treatment. But they are supported with a lot of signposting information. So these are the people that we want, to start having some of these conversations more broadly. So not just when people are experiencing poor mental health, but just generally, we've all got mental health. And they, those of us who are in athletics or running clubs will know too well about how keen people are to talk about some of their physical health, but it's just not the same when it comes to mental health. And so our role at England Athletics is to support all of these individuals to be the best mental health champion they can. They're volunteers, so what they do will vary differently depending on what time they can give up and the size and nature of their club, really. But we help them with some training. We provide a sort of community through Facebook group to support each other, share ideas, lots and lots of guidance information, so they've got information to refer to, and then that main one around signposting. The other part of #RunAndTalk is the campaigns we run, which hopefully some of you might have seen, but twice a year we run a digital campaign online, which is broader than just the clubs that have signed up to #RunAndTalk, but that during those points of the year we encourage our affiliated clubs and Run Together groups to organise a run where anyone can come, whether they're a member of the club or not, and part of that is about talking. It doesn't have to be about mental health, it could be, but just trying to get people to kind of talk and interact and the benefits that come from that. So we run 2 a year. One is specific to young people, so that's in May around #RunAndRevise, and the other one is normally in September, which is Run and Talk, and unfortunately both have been heavily impacted by COVID this year, but something that we're passionate about at England Athletics, and I am personally as well, and we know the running and athletics community are as well. So it's really our way to kind of harness the passion that's already within the sport and do our best to support the clubs and groups to do what a lot of them are already doing very well before us. So I'll tell you a bit more later about how you can get involved.
Thanks, Liz. That's fantastic to hear. Do you have any kind of examples of how Run and Talk has helped people? Again, without sort of getting into too many personal details, but I think it'd be good to sort of hear about any kind of success, individual successes that people have fed back to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots and lots. I think some of the good examples are where someone has taken up running. We've got a lovely video of a lady called Jules. I know she won't mind me showing her name. Which tells Jules' story about how she started running to help manage her depression, and she was fortunate enough to be in an area where one of the lovely mental health champions called Sue delivers a running group, and Sue supported Jules to start running, and Jules has now gone on to set up her own running group and become a mental health champion herself, because she wanted to support others, and I know that sort of story has been replicated all over, and that's why it's I know it's been a tough 6 months or so for everyone, but it's been particularly hard, for me and everyone involved in the programme to know that the impact that COVID has had on people not being able to run, and particularly some of the groups supported by mental health champions. And so it's been even more important. And I'm sure you'll ask me about it later, about some of the ways that those mental health champions have been really, really good and innovative about making sure that there's some support in these strange times.
Susie, can I just jump in before we go on a little bit further, just to kind of remind people to put some questions in the chat box, just so we can ask the person more questions. Andy, I've seen you've got one. I will come to that in just a moment. I just wanted to, just on that point with the run and talk programs, Susie, obviously you alluded to it at the start that it was something that you've been part of. It's something you've had a success story with. Can you just tell us a little bit brief about how you came about that, how accessible it was, and kind of the success story from it?
Sorry, was that a question to me?
Yes.
Your voice is breaking up a bit, Gareth. Sorry. Yeah. So I mentioned at the beginning that I'm a member of 2 running clubs, and my through my membership of the London Front Runners, I discovered the Run and Talk program, and I thought it was really fantastic. And we all know that those of us in the LGBT community know that there are a lot of us suffer from different issues, mental health issues, and I found that really inspiring. And so I discovered sort of that kind of, and I discovered for myself as a runner that it really does improve your mental health. And so I hadn't come out to my other more traditional running club at that point, and that shortly after I came out to win in the Wimbledon Wim Milers, and I was transitioning gender. I talked to the welfare officers there about sort of diversity issues and trying to kind of make the club even more diverse. They were very supportive, but I thought we could do more on diversity, and I managed to persuade others to sort of get into the supporting the Run and Talk program, and we got so much enthusiasm that we ended up with not just myself, but several mental health champions in our club. So there's a lot of interest, and we get good support when we do these events. And actually the talking bit is very much as important as the running bit. So that's going well, and I think it's kind of become embedded as part of the club's culture now, that we should do these things on a regular basis, and that we should support each other as a community, not just as runners, but as people that may have mental health issues. So that's my experience, and it's been very positive.
No, that sounds great. Really good to hear that experience and the positives of the program. We'll just take a little aside now, just to go for Andy's question. It's to you, Helen. So Andy's asked, has MindOut had any sport-related experience in recent times? He wondered if there was any theme amongst that part of the community, if it comes into their conversation. Conversely, has the sport been able to play an effective part in remedy for those who approach the charity? A few questions there, but I'm sure you can.
Interesting questions. Thank you, Andy. Yes, a while ago we had some funding to run some sporting activity groups, and some were more successful than others. I think one thing we found was that people often are quite ambitious about what sports they'd like to do, but actually find it harder to remain motivated, shall we say, if things don't go very well to begin with. And one particular swimming group
I think we're just losing Helen
I
there.
found it very difficult going to. Oh.
Have we got you back, Helen? There, you're just.
Oh, am I back? Am I back in the room?
No worries.
Sorry about that. It's probably my internet connection. I don't know how far I got. I was talking about swimming. What we did do was to support a trans group.
I think we've just lost you a bit at the moment, Helen, so maybe we'll just go on to Liz as a backup while we get that. We can get you back now. Yeah, go on, Helen. We'll go again. We'll try.
Okay, I don't know how much you heard, so I'll say it again. It was about swimming. And what was really interesting was we supported a trans group to hire, in Brighton there's a really small swimming pool that you can hire the whole thing. That was brilliant, that was just right, and that became a weekly trans swimming session that was just for trans people, trans non-binary people, which was absolutely brilliant. We have had some other running groups. I was really interested in what everybody's been saying about run and talk. That sounds excellent. We've had some running groups and teams of people who run half marathons and marathons for us to raise money. And those teams have done brilliantly. They have raised thousands of pounds over the years, honestly, as well as using the training for marathons and half marathons as a form of run and talk. So those teams became really supportive to one another, and people found it was very, very good for their mental health. So yes, sport I think can be so good for people's mental health, but for some people I think it can be difficult to access it in quite the right way.
Yeah, can I jump in and just say on Helen's point about, I was very interested to hear about your support for a trans swimming group in Brighton, and I know there are other trans swimming groups in other places, and that's so important actually for trans people can find it very difficult to be involved in any kind of physical activity or organized sport because of, you know, sort of body image issues and issues about, you know, that they're going through physical changes and so on with their gender transitions. And so those sort of groups that give them a safe space to be involved in any kind of physical activity are such a kind of lifeline for them, and not just physically, but you know, emotionally and mentally, and so that's been a big thing I think in recent years, is some of those swimming groups. So I'd be very interested to hear from both you and Liz a bit more about, you know, whether you see ways that inclusion, how we can include people from the LGBT plus community more, and how that inclusion can help with their kind of self-esteem and those sort of issues.
Yeah, I'm happy to pick on that. I mean, I think what we trying hard to do is support all of our clubs and running groups to, you know, do the basics, is provide welcoming, friendly environments as a starter, and then the second thing is to really listen to people from those communities and understand, you know, what it is that they want. And I appreciate that's not, you know, that's not always the same thing, so trying to manage that, but trying to remove, you know, some of the fear around saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, which often creates, you know, a worse scenario in the first place, because people are so worried about doing something wrong that they do end up doing something a bit, or saying something a bit silly. And I guess for us, because we are a small organisation, just got a bit smaller, unfortunately, that by using the power of the volunteers that exist within the sport already and supporting that, supporting them, hopefully it's going to have a much larger impact across including more people within the sport.
Yes. Shall I carry on with that?
Yes, please, Helen.
Because I think we're very lucky in Brighton. We've got an organisation called BLAGS, which is Brighton Lesbian and Gay Sports Society, and they have all groups for all kinds of sports that LGBTQ people can go and do those sports with other LGBTQ people. Maybe that doesn't quite answer the question about inclusion, but I think sometimes being able to go to a specific group can then give you the confidence perhaps to go and join more mainstream sporting groups once you feel safe enough perhaps to do that. So a bit like people going to trans swimming groups might then feel confident enough or want to go to ordinary swimming sessions in other swimming pools. I think that can be very helpful for people. But I think another way that people can feel more included is when we've got sporting role models as well. I think that's really important. And when LGBTQ athletes come out and are kind of standard bearers, if you like, for excellence in sport, I think that can be really motivating and can really help people feel that their identities might be more included were they to take up that kind of sport.
That's really interesting. What sort of, I mean, I think amongst the Athletics Pride Network, we represent all kind of areas of the sport, from, the kind of elite athletes, the administrators, the governing bodies, down to the grassroots level. What sort of advice would you sort of give us in terms of trying to support good mental health for LGBT people in athletics?
You'll have to excuse me. The cat's just come in, so there might be some background noise or a tail in the face in a minute. I think for me it's trying to appreciate that everybody has got mental health, and therefore we can all unfortunately experience mental health problems, but really having that appreciation and understanding of the more significant factors that play in the LGBT community, and that there is higher prevalence of mental health problems, and I think again coming back to that basics of a welcoming, friendly environment where people are able to be themselves, and also to talk about any issues that they're having. I think we know that running is not the silver bullet for all mental health problems, but it's part of the solution, and it's a really positive, low cost part of the solution. And I guess we need to be mindful as well, though, that in some scenarios athletics and running can also be the cause of poor mental health. So it's important, and I think trying to just bear that in mind as well. But ultimately it's largely out, the sport is done largely outside. It's mostly done in a group, which creates those kind of social benefits to people to be with others, and it's often not done face to face. Particularly the running aspect of the sport, we're side by side, and that gives perfect opportunity for those conversations to happen. And I think because the sport lends itself to improvements, whether they be small or large, that helps with, you know, that self-esteem as well, of knowing that that you've done something, you've achieved something, or you've improved your throwing distance, your jumping distance, or you've done your first 5k, whatever it is. There is room for, you know, real development of self-esteem for everybody.
That's fantastic. We were just, sorry, do come in, Helen.
Yes, I just wanted to echo what Liz was saying. I think you know, she's absolutely right that everything you do needs to be welcoming for LGBTQ people, and I think you need to make sure that is public as well, because I think if you need to tell LGBTQ people that they are welcome. It's really nice when you go somewhere and you do feel welcomed, but it's even better if you look at something, you look at an advert for some event or some sporting thing to get involved in, and it says that LGBTQ people are welcome. I think that's really important, and it makes a huge difference.
That's a really powerful point. A quick question for Liz, actually. So, Liz, what percentage? I'm not sure what percentage of grassroots clubs are signed up to Run and Talk, but I'm just wondering, you know, how many clubs kind of understand this stuff? You know, whether there is training for welfare officers in clubs. What do you think more needs to be done at the grassroots level through the clubs to you know, to make sure that there's that awareness and that you know, understanding of the need to be inclusive and to support people's mental health? Yeah,
so you know, we've only got 351 clubs and Run Together groups signed up, which is great, but I think I mentioned earlier we've got more than 1,500 affiliated clubs and organisations, so there's quite a long way to go. I think the important thing is that outside of the programme, there's support for clubs and coaches to better understand mental health and how they play a role in supporting that, not just of people experiencing mental health problems, but you know, of their own members, some of whom will be experiencing mental health problems, and some who may in the future, because who knows what will happen. So there's a lot more to do. You know, for us, I think it's always been about getting these conversations started and regular and commonplace, so that the more people are hearing about it, the more that people are realizing that this is part and parcel of what the sport can contribute to. So yeah, if you look at it in percentages of clubs involved, it's quite small for #Run and Talk programme, because we have a large membership, but there's other things that people are accessing outside of that, and there really is a turn, I think, in the tide of people really understanding that, you know, physical and mental health are very well connected, and that, you know, mental health is also part and parcel of being involved in sport.
That's really helpful, thanks. And coming back to Helen, Helen, as we sort of take forward the Athletics Pride Network, and we're thinking about working, you know, at different levels, and you know, including you know, working with grassroots clubs to you know, persuade them to sort of take up the baton of inclusivity and to come up with programs. How can we make the most of our kind of alliance with MindOut to kind of have you know, good mental health alongside the kind of inclusivity messages? What do you think should be our kind of approaches as the Athletics Pride Network?
Well, I think what you're doing tonight is a really good start.
Mm-hmm.
Having World Mental Health Day events is one way to focus on mental health, isn't it? And one way to start those conversations. And I think talking about mental health all the time is really important. And talking about LGBTQ mental health specifically, because there is no doubt now that LGBTQ people have very high rates of mental health issues compared to the rest of the population. So, for example, 40% of all LGBTQ people will have mental health issues at some point in their lifetime, compared to 25% of the general population. And 40% is nearly half, and it's so much more than 25%. So there's something going on here, and we need more people to know about that and talk about that. And that in itself raises awareness. It helps people think about what responsibility they can take to improve the mental health of their own communities. And that's very much what one of our messages at MindOut is, that LGBTQ mental health is everybody's responsibility. It's not just about the people who have mental health issues, it's about all of us doing something about that. So I would say, keep talking about it. Keep talking about mental health. Keep thinking about what you can do to support other people's mental health as you go along, and make sure that you've got some resources in that. MindOut can be a resource for you. You can, if you're talking to people and they're struggling in any way, tell them about us. Tell them about our website. They can come to our website, find out all sorts of things, and get some support while they're there.
That's fantastic.
Susie, can I just jump in just quickly, because I know we've got 5 minutes left on the original time. We might just go slightly over, but if anyone's got any more questions, please do put it in the meeting chat. But I think we'll just go with the last little question you've got, Susie, on the list. But yeah, any more questions, just put them in now. It'd be great to have.
Yeah, here's a question from Andy, which is to Liz, whether the issue with sign up is about perception, or do you think it's about nerves, about doing something wrong? I think that was in the context of dealing with LGBTQ plus people, and people not from that community thinking they might sort of put a foot wrong somehow.
I think I was just typing a response there for you, Andy. But I think from the mental health perspective, I think that clubs perhaps haven't signed up to run and talk. There are two main concerns. One is there is still this stigma around, if we sign up to a mental health programme, that means that lots of people with severe mental health conditions are going to suddenly turn up at the club, and we don't know how to support them, and we're worried about that. So I think, again, it's that conversation around what do we actually mean by mental health, and the fact that actually some of those people are already in your club and groups. What I do think perhaps is maybe just as big an issue is actually the volunteer capacity within a club to sign up and join a formal programme, albeit it's designed purposely to kind of be low resource for a club, but it does still need the club to appoint mental health champions into another volunteer role, and we know a lot of clubs are already stretched as far as volunteers. So I think probably it's to do with capacity as much as it is to do with the kind of concerns and stigma around it. It's also partly that we've tried to roll the programme out purposefully not too quickly, because we are relatively resource limited, and so we've all 1,500 clubs and clubs and organisations all signed up right away, then we would struggle to support them effectively. Whereas what we try and do is we have 4 application periods each year, and this might segue nicely for you, Gareth, on the last question. And we're actually October is an application window now for clubs to join the hashtag Run and Talk programme, and that just helps us to manage the slow, gradual growth of the programme, which means we can induct mental health champions in batches throughout the year, which helps us to make sure that they're actually getting support from us that they need. And as I say, that's open now. I can send the details over, but if you go to englandathletics.org/mental health, then you'll get all the information about the programme and how clubs can register throughout October and appoint mental health champions.
That's fantastic. One of the things that I hear a lot in LGBT plus circles is that so many of us have kind of got put off being involved in any kind of organised physical activity and sport from school days, really, because they found that school changing rooms, gyms, whatever, have been not very well controlled spaces, and that anyone who's a bit different gets bullied and so on. And so an awful lot of people, I think, in our community have kind of dropped out of organised sport. So I see one big issue for the Athletics Pride Network as being to try and draw those people back in. So I wondered whether perhaps come to Helen first, but and then Liz. But do you have any thoughts on how we can kind of get those people who've had really bad experiences of organised sport, probably at school during the school days, to kind of draw them back into seeing that it's a positive and supportive thing that can really help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just said is a really good way to draw people in. Is, if we can hear stories of people who were put off at school but have gone back to sport and found it really beneficial and welcoming and affirmative, I think that's what we need. So stories like yours, Susie, is really, really good. Make a podcast, make a little video about it, and put it out there. I think that would be really encouraging for people. It goes back to what I was saying about role models, and role models don't have to be just the sort of elite athletes. They can also be the more down to earth, the more ordinary athletes, if you like, that show that athletics can be for all of us, despite our backgrounds. So I think I'm a great fan of naming the problem and putting it out there, and that way that may reassure people. And also having things like sort of beginners options. So Blags do that, and I think they do that very well. So like, for instance, with their tennis offer, there's a sort of beginners or very rusty tennis players meet up, and then there's a more expert one. So you know what level you're going in at. Do you see what I mean? So you can, if you haven't done any sports in school, you'll be with other people who haven't done any, and you won't be shamed or embarrassed again by not being able to keep up with people who are better than you. And I think that's something that really puts people off, is the fear of being shamed yet again. Yeah,
that's a really important point. Liz, did you have any thoughts on that point about people who've been kind of scared off sports from early experiences?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount that needs to be done, and is being done. So I won't go on too long about it, but there's a lot from for us from a governance perspective around supporting clubs to have appropriate policies and procedures in place to tackle discrimination, so that where there are negative experiences in clubs, that that's dealt with appropriately, and doesn't contribute to even more poor mental health, right down to just providing clubs with information and knowledge, again, to build confidence, and then, as I come back to it over and over again, is providing that welcoming and supportive environment where people are fully aware that they can be a beginner, that they can walk, they can come and have a try, that it's not it's not just about the taking part in the sport, it's everything around it, about being in a group and with others, hopefully is a much more positive experience than perhaps they had at school.
That's fantastic. So Gareth, how are we doing for time? Have we got
We are over time now, so
okay.
I do appreciate if people do have to go. I think there's just one quick question at the end, so although it's probably not a quick question, but if we can keep answers brief, Susie, I'll leave it to you, but if we just give it another 5 minutes max, and then I know people will have to go. So.
Yeah, okay. So what we wanted to do was, before we sort of wrap this up, is just ask both of you to let us know where our members can find more information about MindOut and about England Athletics Run and Talk programs. So this is your chance to do your plugging. So who wants to go first? Do you want to go first, Liz?
Yes, I'll go first. So I think, as I said, englandathletics.org/mental health if you want to find out more about that work, and a quick plug for World Mental Health Day on Saturday. We're supporting the campaign led by Mind, the mental health charity, called #DoOneThing. So we're encouraging all of our clubs and members to do one thing for better mental health on Saturday. So whether that's for their own mental health or to support someone with their mental health. So that could be going out for a run, it could be picking up the phone to someone to see how they're doing, it could be I don't know, taking some time to sit and read a book, anything, but do one thing. Joining on on social media to support and encourage other people to do that as well. There's no excuse, it's one thing for better mental health.
Fantastic, thanks Liz. And Helen, would you like to do your little commercial break?
Well, I would say look at our website. It's www.mindout.org.uk. Have a look at what we've got on there. There's some great little blogs from our volunteers, from service users, lots of stuff about our services and about the importance of LGBTQ mental health, as well as I was saying, access to our services. And also on Saturday, on World Mental Health Day, our online service is open from 12 till 2. So if you know any LGBTQ people who might need support, please do encourage them to go and make use of that service.
Fantastic. Well, I think I'm not sure if it falls to me or to others, but that's been absolutely fantastic from both you, Helen, and you, Liz, and I know we're immensely grateful to you for giving up your time to contribute this evening. I think we've all learned a lot, and that's given us lots of good stuff to reflect on and to think about how we can, build, support for good mental health into the Athletic Pride's activities. So thank you, from the bottom of our hearts, and have a very successful World Mental Health Day on Saturday. So thanks.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for taking part, and thanks Susie for leading the questions as well expertly. So thank you everybody, and have a nice evening.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.